The men thought they knew her, a calm medic with steady hands and a quiet smile. But when the enemy closed in, and the battlefield turned to chaos, they saw something no one could ever forget. In seconds, the healer became the hunter, and the SEALs swore they would never forget her fury. Sarah Whitfield was the kind of woman who blended into the background of war, not because she lacked courage, but because her role demanded it. At 28, she carried the burden of every life in her care. To the men of SEAL Team Bravo, she wasn't just Doc. She was the silent force that kept them stitched together through broken bones, bullet wounds, and nights that felt like the end of the world. Sarah had steady hands, calm eyes, and a voice that could cut through panic like a lifeline. She moved with quiet precision, checking supplies, taping up torn flesh, whispering hope into the ears of men who thought they might never see home again. The team respected her, admired her, but none of them truly knew her. Not the girl from a small Texas town who had grown up shooting cans off fence posts with her father. Not the woman who had once held the barrel of a rifle as comfortably as she now held bandages. To them, she was the medic, the angel in camouflage. She never argued with that image, never showed them the fire that lived just beneath the surface. It was easier to let them believe she was only there to heal. But Sarah knew war had a way of tearing off masks, of revealing the parts of yourself you tried to keep buried. As the dust and heat of the Afghan night pressed against her skin, and as the men laughed softly at a crude joke to ease the tension, Sarah sat quietly among them, her thoughts distant, her fingers resting lightly on the kit strapped across her chest. No one could guess that within hours, the quiet medic they leaned on would transform into something they would never forget. The night had been still, almost too still, when the first shot cracked through the air. It wasn't the distant echo of warning fire. They were already in the kill zone. Bullets ripped from the ridgeline above, cutting through sand and stone, forcing the SEALs into the dirt. The world turned into chaos in seconds. Tracers streaked like red comets, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling every breath. Men barked orders, scrambling for cover, returning fire with precision, but the enemy had the high ground in numbers. Sarah's instinct snapped into gear as she dragged one wounded SEAL behind a crumbling wall, her hands working faster than thought. She pressed gauze into a bleeding shoulder, her voice steady even as rounds cracked inches from her head. "Stay with me, you're not done yet," she whispered, her tone calm, commanding. But as she looked up, her stomach dropped. The team was pinned, and the firefight was slipping away. Another SEAL went down with a cry, his rifle clattering to the ground. Sarah felt a surge of helplessness, but then something inside her shifted, something buried and forgotten. She glanced at the abandoned rifle lying beside her, the same weapon she had trained with years ago, the same feel of cold steel her father had placed in her hands when she was just a girl. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. She was the medic, not the shooter. But then she saw it in their faces. Desperation, fear, the realization they might not all make it out. Her jaw tightened. She made her choice. With steady hands, she picked up the rifle, chambered a round, and let her eyes sharpen into something the SEALs had never seen before. In that moment, the medic disappeared, and the sniper was reborn. The rifle felt both foreign and familiar in Sarah's hands, like a ghost of a life she had buried but never forgotten. She inhaled slowly, steadying her heart, blocking out the screams, the chaos, the fire raining down from the ridgeline. Time seemed to narrow into a tunnel, and at the end of it, only her target existed. The enemy sniper on the crest leaned out from behind his rock, scanning for SEAL heads to claim. Sarah's finger curled, the rifle cracked, and his body dropped like a stone. Silence followed, stunned, before the fight roared back to life. The SEALs lifted their heads, disbelief flashing across their faces. "Where the hell did that come from?" one muttered, but Sarah didn't answer. Her focus was razor-sharp, her breath a rhythm, her scope dancing from shadow to shadow. Another target appeared, a machine gun nest spewing fire into the team's cover. Sarah adjusted, squeezed, and the nest went silent, its crew scattered to dust. The balance of the battle shifted, the relentless pressure lifting with every shot she delivered. She wasn't just firing. She was orchestrating the battlefield, each kill buying her brother's time, each pull of the trigger reminding them that survival was still possible. One seal looked at her like he had never seen her before, his voice a whisper of awe. "She's not a medic. She's death on the ridge." But Sarah wasn't thinking about titles or names. She was thinking about the men bleeding behind her, the ones who still had a chance. The fury in her chest wasn't rage. It was purpose, carved from years of silence, unleashed in the one moment they needed her most. And when the last enemy broke and ran, it wasn't the seals who had saved the night. It was her. When the dust settled, the battlefield lay in eerie silence, broken only by the ragged breathing of the wounded. The seals moved cautiously, clearing corners, their weapons still ready, but their eyes kept drifting to Sarah. She sat on the ground, rifle laid across her knees, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline had drained. The same hands that had tied bandages, pressed wounds, and saved lives had also delivered death with flawless precision. One of the younger seals, his arm wrapped in a bloody tourniquet, knelt in front of her. "Doc," he said softly, voice filled with a reverence she hadn't heard before. "You didn't just save us. You brought us back." She looked at him, tears burning behind her eyes, but she forced a small smile. "I told you," she whispered. "I don't let my brothers die." Around her, hardened warriors, men who had stormed compounds and stared down death, watched her with a mix of awe and gratitude that words could never fully capture. They had trained to fight, to kill, to survive. But Sarah had carried both burdens. The healer and the hunter, the shield and the sword. The senior seal, a scar across his cheek and blood on his uniform, finally broke the silence. He stepped forward, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "From this day, none of us will forget what you did here. Not your fury, not your courage, not the way you stood when the world wanted us gone." The men raised their fists to their chests, a silent salute, an unspoken bond that would outlive the war. Sarah closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her, but a strange peace settled in her heart. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like an outsider in their brotherhood. She was one of them. Weeks later, far from the battlefield, Sarah stood at a small military ceremony under the open sky. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in hues of red and gold, like fire chasing the day's end. The SEAL team lined up in crisp uniforms, their eyes sharp but softened with respect as she walked past them. No rifle in her hands now, only the weight of memory. The commanding officer spoke of valor, sacrifice, and unbreakable bonds. But the men behind him knew the truth ran deeper. They had seen her fury when death closed in, and they had felt her hands steady their pulse when hope was fading. When her name was called, the oldest SEAL stepped forward and placed a medal in her palm. But it wasn't the medal that mattered. It was the silent nod from every man in that row, the quiet acknowledgement that she was forever carved into their brotherhood. Sarah clutched the medal, her fingers trembling, and for a moment she saw the battlefield again. The flashes of gunfire, the cries of the wounded, and the stillness after her final shot. She had carried them through the fire, and in return, they had given her a place she thought she'd never earn. "We'll never forget her fury," one SEAL had said on that night, and now those words became her legacy. As the sun sank, Sarah exhaled, a tear slipping free, not from sorrow but from a strange peace. She had entered as a medic, carrying bandages and faith, but she left as both healer and warrior, forever remembered in the quiet, unspoken oath of brothers who had lived to tell the tale. If this story moved you, show your support by liking, commenting, and sharing it with others. Subscribe to Unheard Heroes for more powerful tales of courage, sacrifice, and honor.